The sky was a flat, dull gray as the alien delegation hovered above the Earth's surface. They had expected a wasteland, an unremarkable world tucked away in the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Instead, the vast plains below stretched out in eerie silence, hiding a mystery that none of them had anticipated. Captain Varen, tall and severe, stood at the head of the landing platform, his amber eyes narrowing as he surveyed the landscape. His voice cut through the stillness like a blade. "Get that equipment running. We need readings now." Lieutenant Rin worked swiftly at the controls, a sharp contrast to the captain's impatience. Younger and more cautious, Rin had a growing suspicion that their mission was more dangerous than Varen wanted to admit. He glanced at the scanners again, their bright lights flickering erratically. Something beneath the surface was interfering with the readings, something powerful, ancient. "We're picking up unusual energy signatures," Rin said, his voice steady, though his mind raced with questions. "Much stronger than we anticipated." Captain Varen dismissed the information with a wave of his hand. "It's likely interference from Earth's primitive atmosphere. This planet is barely out of its stone age. We're here to extract what we need and leave." Sergeant Holt, the human observer assigned to accompany the delegation, stood silently behind them, his expression unreadable. Unlike the aliens, he wasn't armed with advanced technology, just a quiet, calculating mind. His military posture betrayed nothing, though there was a sharpness in his gaze that suggested he knew more than he let on. "What exactly are you looking for?" Holt asked, his voice calm but probing. "Your planet has resources we've never encountered elsewhere," Varen answered dismissively. "We aim to harness them." Holt raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. He watched as Rin's scanners flickered again, then abruptly went dark. A heavy silence fell over the group as the ground beneath them trembled. It was subtle at first, like the pulse of something far below. Rin frowned, tapping his controls with increasing urgency. "That's no atmospheric interference," he muttered. "The energy signatures, they're activating." Before Varen could respond, the earth cracked open with a low groan. From beneath the soil, a colossal, metallic structure began to rise, its surface etched with symbols no one had seen in millennia. The air around them vibrated with unseen power, as if the planet itself had woken from a long slumber. "Impossible," Varen whispered, his arrogance melting into disbelief. "This shouldn't exist on a world like this." Rin's breath caught in his throat as he stepped closer to the rising structure. "These readings, they're older than anything we've encountered. Captain, this changes everything." The tension in the air thickened. Varen's eyes burned with anger as he struggled to maintain control over the situation. "Shut it down. We're not here to play archaeologists." But Rin wasn't listening. His fingers danced over the controls, scanning every inch of the massive relic. His face paled. "This isn't just some artifact. It's a weapon. A dormant one, but it's waking up." Holt's quiet voice cut through the tension like a knife. "You're too late to stop it." Varen turned to him sharply. "What did you say?" Holt stepped forward, his gaze locked on the ancient structure now towering above them. "You came here thinking we were helpless, didn't you? That humanity was just another primitive species ripe for conquest. But we've known about this for centuries. We've just been waiting." Varen's face twisted in confusion. "Waiting for what?" Holt smiled, a grim expression that carried the weight of centuries of human history. "For someone foolish enough to activate it." Before anyone could react, a low hum emanated from the relic, building in intensity. The symbols carved into its surface glowed with a fierce, unnatural light, casting strange shadows across the alien team. Varen's fear was palpable now, his bravado crumbling under the weight of what he couldn't understand. "We need to retreat," Varen barked, his voice cracking. "Now!" But it was too late. The air itself seemed to ripple as the relic pulsed with energy, sending shockwaves across the landscape. Varen stumbled backward, gripping the edge of the platform. Rin stood frozen, transfixed by the spectacle unfolding before them. Only Holt remained calm, watching as the long-dormant weapon came fully to life. "This world isn't what you thought it was," Holt said quietly. "And neither are we." In the distance, other relics began to rise from the earth, each one humming with the same ancient power. The alien delegation stood in stunned silence, their mission unraveling before their eyes. The planet they had underestimated was awakening, its secrets, long buried, now threatening to change the galaxy forever. The ground still trembled beneath them, the hum of the relics growing louder with every second. Captain Varen barked orders into his communicator, but static was all that returned. His carefully laid plans had crumbled in an instant, and now he was trapped in a waking nightmare. Sweat beaded on his forehead as the tension mounted. "Rin, get the ship ready for extraction!" Varen's voice was sharp with desperation, his earlier arrogance nowhere to be found. But Rin remained glued to his station, eyes wide as he analyzed the data streaming in. "It's no use," he muttered, shaking his head. "The power from these structures is interfering with our systems. They're jamming every frequency." Varen's fists clenched as his frustration boiled over. "Damn it, Rin! We need a solution, not excuses." Sergeant Holt stood apart from the frantic activity, his expression unreadable as he studied the ancient relic looming above them. There was something almost serene in his composure, a quiet certainty that unnerved Varen. Holt's earlier words echoed in the captain's mind. "We've been waiting." "What do you know about this, Holt?" Varen demanded, his voice harsh. "What are you hiding?" Holt turned to face him, his gaze steady. "You think you're the first to come here? The first to see Earth as weak?" His voice carried an eerie calm, as if the chaos around him was nothing new. "We've been preparing for this moment for generations." Varen took a step closer, his amber eyes narrowing. "Preparing for what?" "To be underestimated," Holt said simply. "For centuries, we let the galaxy believe we were insignificant, a backwater world with nothing to offer but curiosity. But we always knew one day, someone like you would come." He gestured toward the towering relic. "And we made sure when you did you'd regret it." The relic's glow intensified, and the ground shook harder. Varen's eyes darted toward the horizon, where more structures began to rise from the earth. There was no mistaking it now, these weren't just relics. They were weapons, vast and terrible, born from a civilization long forgotten. And they were waking up. Rin's voice trembled as he called out from his console. "Captain, the energy readings, they're spiking. Whatever these things are, they're preparing for something massive." Varen's fear deepened, but he wasn't ready to surrender to panic. "Not yet. We can still control this situation," he insisted. "We came here for those resources, and we're not leaving empty-handed." "We'll control?" Holt interrupted, his tone hardening. "You don't understand, do you? This isn't your game anymore. You triggered something ancient, something beyond your comprehension. And now it's waking up, and it will sweep you aside like the others." A sudden flash of light erupted from the largest relic, piercing the sky. The air itself seemed to ripple, warping as the shockwave radiated outwards. Varen staggered back, eyes wide with terror. What have we unleashed?" Holt didn't flinch. "Earth's true legacy." The ground began to fracture, deep crevices splitting the landscape as the relics hummed in unison. Sparks of energy crackled through the air, filling the sky with an electric charge that sent shivers down their spines. Rin's fingers flew across his console, desperately trying to regain control, but it was futile. "I can't stop it!" Rin yelled, panic rising in his throat. "The systems are completely overloaded. The relics are reacting to each other. They're creating some kind of network." Varen's breath came in shallow gasps as his mind raced for a solution. "We need reinforcements." "Reinforcements won't help you now," Holt said quietly. He stepped forward, his presence suddenly dominating the scene. "You came here thinking you could take whatever you wanted, that we'd bend to your will. But you didn't understand what you were waking." Varen's face twisted in fury. "And what is that, exactly?" Holt smiled, a cold, knowing smile. "The end of your empire." The hum reached a fever pitch, drowning out everything else. The relics pulsed with energy, and a blinding white light engulfed the horizon. For a moment, everything was suspended in eerie silence. Then the ground erupted, as columns of energy shot skyward, tearing through the atmosphere with devastating force. Rin screamed, thrown from his console as the ship's systems exploded in a shower of sparks. Varen stumbled backward, his legs giving out beneath him as the world collapsed around him. And Holt simply watched. "You should have left us alone," Holt said softly, his voice barely audible over the roar of destruction. "Now it's too late." As the shockwave hit, the alien delegation was thrown into chaos, their carefully laid plans disintegrating in the wake of Earth's ancient power. The sky cracked open, and the full force of humanity's hidden weaponry was unleashed. And for the first time, Captain Varen understood the terrible truth: Earth had never been weak. It had been waiting. The ground tremors from the relics had not subsided; if anything, they intensified. The fractured terrain beneath Varen's feet shifted dangerously, as though the very planet was rejecting them. His heart raced, but his mind, honed through years of command, clung to one goal: survival. "Get back to the ship!" Varen barked, his voice barely cutting through the thunderous roar of energy erupting from the relics. His crew scrambled, but every step was a fight against the quaking earth. Sergeant Holt, however, remained unmoved, his gaze fixed on the blazing relics. There was something almost reverent in the way he stood there, as if he had known all along that this day would come. "You knew," Varen accused, his voice shaking with a mix of fear and fury. "You knew what these things were capable of, and you said nothing!" Holt turned slowly, his expression unreadable. "You wouldn't have listened," he said flatly. "You thought Earth was just another primitive world to exploit. But this planet has secrets older than any of us, Captain." Varen opened his mouth to retort, but a sudden explosion from the relics silenced him. The ground beneath one of the towering structures collapsed inward, revealing a cavernous abyss glowing with a cold, blue light. The temperature plummeted, the air crackling with energy, and an overwhelming presence began to radiate from the depths. "They're waking up," Holt whispered, his voice almost drowned by the roar of the cataclysm. "The Guardians!" Varen's pulse quickened. Guardians? He had heard whispers of ancient sentinels buried deep within Earth, legends passed down by explorers who barely escaped with their lives. But those were just stories, or so he had believed. Now, as the relics seemed to draw power from the planet itself, he was no longer certain. "You mean to tell me these relics are alive?" Varen hissed, incredulous. "That we've been digging into a graveyard for gods?" Holt's lips curled into a grim smile. "Alive, or something close to it. The Guardians have been dormant for centuries, waiting for a threat like yours to rouse them." The rumbling intensified, and the sky darkened as the energy from the relics spiraled upwards, blotting out the sun. The air around them felt heavy, oppressive, as though the very atmosphere was thickening with power. Varen's stomach churned. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. They were the conquerors. The invaders. Not the ones running in fear. "Captain?" Rin's panicked voice crackled through the static in his earpiece. "The ship's systems are failing. We're losing power. Everything's going dark." Varen's blood ran cold. If the ship couldn't launch, they'd be stranded. "Holt," Varen growled, gripping the sergeant by his arm. "You have to stop this. You have to know how." Holt didn't pull away. Instead, he locked eyes with Varen, his gaze steady. "There's no stopping it now. The Guardians are beyond our control. They're the last defense of a world that's been attacked too many times." Varen's mind raced, his instincts screaming for a solution. There had to be something, some way to salvage the mission. But as he looked around at the devastation, the relics glowing brighter and brighter, he realized how utterly outmatched they were. This wasn't just an ancient defense system. It was a force of nature, beyond their comprehension or control. And it was coming for them. "We need to get off this rock," Varen said, his voice low but firm. "Rin, keep trying to get the ship operational. Holt, if you have any tricks left, now's the time to use them." Holt shook his head, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, regret perhaps. "There's only one way off this planet now, Captain. And that's if the Guardians decide to let us go." Varen's jaw clenched, but before he could respond, a deafening crack split the air. One of the relics began to descend, its massive form sinking into the earth like a predator preparing to strike. The ground buckled and twisted, and suddenly the air was alive with pulses of energy, each one stronger than the last. The crew scrambled, barely keeping their footing as the ground rippled beneath them. The tension was suffocating, the sense of impending doom growing with every second. Varen glanced up, heart hammering in his chest. The sky had gone completely black now, filled with writhing energy that crackled and danced like a living storm. Whatever was coming for them, it was bigger and older than any enemy they had ever faced. And it was waking up. "Move!" Varen shouted, leading the charge back toward the ship, though every instinct told him it was futile. His mind spun with fear and frustration, the weight of their impending doom pressing down on him. As the ground opened up beneath them and the Guardians began to stir, Varen couldn't shake the chilling thought: Earth had never needed protection from the galaxy. The galaxy needed protection from Earth. The ship's interior was dimly lit, emergency lights flickering as the crew rushed to their stations. The air felt charged, heavy with the tension of imminent danger. Varen slammed his fist onto the console, his frustration palpable as the systems remained unresponsive. His knuckles throbbed, but he hardly noticed, consumed by the rapidly deteriorating situation outside. "Any progress?" he demanded, his voice harsh as he turned to Rin, who was frantically typing at the command terminal. Rin shook his head, beads of sweat gathering on his brow. "Still nothing, Captain. The systems are locked up. Whatever energy those relics are putting out, it's frying our controls." Varen cursed under his breath. They were trapped on a planet waking from a slumber that should have remained eternal. The relics, they hadn't just stirred, they'd summoned something primal, something far older and deadlier than he had anticipated. Time was running out, and his crew was far from ready to confront what was coming. "We can't just sit here," Varen barked. "If we stay grounded, we're dead." Holt, standing off to the side, was unusually calm, his eyes distant, almost reflective. He hadn't spoken since their sprint back to the ship, and that unnerved Varen more than anything. Holt knew more than he was letting on, but now wasn't the time to pry. There had to be a way out of this mess. "Sergeant," Varen called, his tone demanding answers. "What's our move? You said the Guardians decide who lives. How do we get on their good side?" Holt met his gaze, his eyes steady but somber. "There may be no good side for us, Captain. These relics weren't built by us or for us. They're part of a defense mechanism designed to protect this planet, an ancient one." Varen frowned. "Protect the planet from what? Us?" Holt hesitated, his next words carrying a weight of history Varen had never fully grasped. "No. From whatever comes after us." Silence followed, the gravity of Holt's words sinking in. Varen's gut twisted. He wasn't sure what was worse, the idea that Earth itself could obliterate them, or that something far worse lay beyond. The relics were the first layer of defense, but what came next? "Get this ship moving," Varen growled at Rin. "I don't care how you do it." "I'm trying, Captain, but—" Suddenly, the ship jolted violently. A massive impact rocked the hull, sending Varen stumbling. Sparks rained down from the control panels, and alarms blared. "We're under attack!" Rin shouted, gripping the console as the ship trembled. "Something just hit us hard." Varen's mind raced. They hadn't been tracked. No alien fleet was supposed to be in this sector. But then it hit him. The Guardians weren't waiting. They had activated. "Shields!" Varen yelled. "Get the shields up!" Rin's fingers danced over the controls, fighting the system's sluggish response. "Shields are offline!" he shouted back, panic creeping into his voice. "We're completely exposed." Another hit. This time, the entire ship lurched, the lights flickering before plunging into near darkness. The only illumination came from the pulsing glow of the relics outside, now casting eerie shadows across the bridge. "Captain, we can't take much more of this," Rin warned. Varen could feel the tremors beneath his feet, the pulse of energy growing stronger with each passing second. They needed to escape, but every option felt like a dead end. His mind raced, frantically calculating their odds, none of which looked good. Holt stepped forward then, his voice eerily calm. Captain, there may be one way to survive this. Varen eyed him warily. I'm listening. We need to stop fighting it, Holt said. If the Guardians see us as a threat, they'll destroy us. But if we can convince them we're not here to invade. You're suggesting we surrender? Varen interrupted, disbelief dripping from his words. Holt didn't flinch. I'm saying we prove we're not their enemy. These relics, the Guardians, they're reacting to our presence, to the way we've disrupted their world. But if we show restraint, if we deactivate our weapons and stand down, they might let us leave. The idea was madness. Varen knew it. But they were out of options, and Holt's calm certainty was unnerving enough to give him pause. And if you're wrong? Varen asked, his voice low, laced with tension. Holt's gaze didn't waver. Then we're dead anyway. Varen clenched his jaw, weighing the risk. The ship shuddered again, another pulse of energy rattling through the hull. Time was running out. If Holt was right, it was their only chance. If he was wrong, well, they wouldn't have much time to regret it. Deactivate the weapons, Varen ordered, his voice hard, resolute. Rin hesitated but complied, his hands shaking as he keyed in the command. The weapon systems powered down, the hum of the ship's offensive capabilities fading into silence. For a moment, nothing happened. The air hung thick with tension, the crew holding their breath as the relics outside pulsed one final time. Then, the rumbling stopped. Varen exhaled slowly, the weight of the decision pressing on his shoulders. No, he said quietly. Let's see if they'll let us live.